So at the outset, we welcome our esteemed guests by presenting suppliants. I would like to request Professor Upendra Padhi, the chairman of the Conclave and director of IMS, Institute of Media Studies, to present the suppliants and badges to all our dignitaries. We just acknowledge it with the gracious presence of our dignitaries with a big round of applause. Sri Shambaranjan Patnaik ji, the chairman of Sambad Group, and now Professor Dr. K.G. Suresh ji, former Vice Chancellor, Makhanlal Chaturvedi, National University of Journalism and Communication. And we are also extremely grateful to all the dignitaries present over, Dr. Fakir Mohan Nag ji, Sri Ruben Banerjee, and Sri Sandeep Sahu ji. Dr. Sandeep Sahu, senior journalist and columnist from Bhubaneswar. And Dr. Fakir Mohan Nag is with us, the director of School of Mass and Communication, Faculty of Arts, Manipal University, the School of Media and Communication, Jaipur, and he will be just chairing this session. And at the outset, I would like to request all the dignitaries to present floral tributes to Dr. Hari Krishna Mahatab, the pioneer of media, the pioneer of journalism in the state, one of the great statesmanly figure of the state, and also the architect of modern Odisha, Dr. Hari Krishna Mahatab ji. As we know, a new age, a new sensibility ushered in with the advent of Dr. Hari Krishna Mahatab ji into the realms of politics, into the realms of socialism, into the realms of media and journalism study. And particularly as the pioneer of journalism in the state, he has set up Prajatantra, and already 100 years have passed over the years. Meanwhile, and Prajatantra, the centenary popular daily of the state, that has completed 100 years, has been a milestone, has been the greatest contribution of Dr. Mahatabji, and also equally he has contributed immensely to the history and to the literature of the state. As a great historian and literary figure of the state, he has given a new dimension to the study of history, to the study of literature. And also he was a great politician, the Chief Minister of Odisha, Honorable Governor of Bombay, and also Honorable Union Minister of the country. He had set some benchmarks in politics, and as a statesmanly figure of the state, he has carved a niche for himself. And this year, we are celebrating 125th birth anniversary of Dr. Hari Krishna Mahatab, the great statesmanly figure and the architect of modern Odisha. And coincidentally, the 8th National Media Conclave is all set to witness this plenary session, wherein there will be detailed deliberations on the contributions of Dr. Hari Krishna Mahatab to Odia journalism, and eminent dignified personals from different walks of life, particularly from the domain of journalism and media studies. They are here, who will be just deliberating on the contributions of Dr. Mahatab to Odia journalism. I take the privilege to request Dr. Fakir Mohan Nag ji, Director, School of Media and Communication, Faculty of Arts, Manipal University, Jaipur, to present the great guest introduction and theme presentation, and also to chair the session. With a big round of applause, we welcome Dr. Fakir Mohan Nag to do all these things.
मन्नाथ श्री जगन्नाथ मद्गुरु श्री जगद्गुरु मदात्मा सर्वभूतात्मा तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः. I bow my head before all the gurus present over here, in front of me and on the dais. All are my seniors, my gurus. If I am standing here today only because of my teachers, and if we all are here only because of our teachers. So once again, I bow my head before Lord Jagannath and all my gurus present over here. And it is my privilege to invite all our dignitaries to this 8th National Media Conclave on the occasion where we are celebrating 125th birth anniversary of the great journalist turned politician and the great communicator of our times, Sri Hare Krishna Mahtab Ji. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have the honor of welcoming a visionary leader whose name is synonymous with modern Odia journalism and a relentless commitment to truth, Sri Saumaranjan Patnaik sir, who is the chairperson of today's session. As the chairman of the Sambad Group, Sri Patnaik has redefined the media landscape of Odisha. Under his stewardship, Sambad, Odisha's largest circulated daily, has grown not just as a newspaper, but as a movement, informing, inspiring, and empowering millions of people every day. His work has transcended the boundaries of journalism, bridging the gap between tradition and progress while keeping the heartbeat of Odisha alive, who has been working since a quite long time for the pride of Odisha, for the conservation, preservation, dissemination, and progression of our mother tongue, Odia language. Sri Patnaik is more than a media magnate. He is a public intellectual, seasoned politician, and political scientist, and a dedicated statesman. His love for Odia culture and literature is reflected in his persistent efforts to preserve and promote Odisha's rich heritage. With his fearless voice and unwavering integrity, he stands as a beacon of ethical journalism in a time when it is most needed. I had the privilege, it's a personal connection, I had the privilege of working under his mentorship in his television channel as the output editor for 1 year, 2 months, 3 days, and 4 hours. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let us extend a warm welcome to this media baron who continues to inspire millions of Orias. Welcome you, sir. It's a proud privilege to have you here. As guest speaker, we have Professor K.G. Suresh. It is a great pride and excitement that we welcome luminary in the field of media and communication, Professor K.G. Suresh, to this gathering today. Professor Suresh is a celebrated academician, seasoned journalist, and visionary leader in the domain of journalism and mass communication. As the former Vice Chancellor of prestigious Makhanlal Chaturvedi National University of Journalism and Communication and Director General of Indian Institute of Mass Communication, New Delhi, he spearheaded transformative initiatives that elevated the institution to new heights of excellence. A prolific writer, a thought leader, Professor Suresh has a career spanning of decades. He is a journalist turned academician. His deep understanding of the ever-evolving media landscape, combined with his passion for nurturing young talent, has left an indelible mark on both the newsroom and the classroom. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Professor K.G. Suresh, sir. Welcome you, sir, to 8th National Media Conclave. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an absolute honor to introduce a stalwart of Indian journalism, a man whose pen has shaped narratives and challenged the status quo. Mr. Ruben Banerjee, welcome you, sir. Currently serving as the General Secretary of the prestigious Editors Guild of India, Mr. Banerjee is the champion of journalistic integrity and press freedom. With an illustrious career spanning over 3 decades, he is best known for his tenure as Editor-in-Chief of Outlook, where he brought bold and balanced journalism to the forefront, earning widespread respect and admiration. Mr. Banerjee's journey as a journalist has been nothing short of inspiring. His work exemplifies the essence of fearless reporting. As a vocal advocate for ethical journalism and a thought leader in the industry, Mr. Banerjee continues to inspire the media fraternity with his wisdom and unwavering commitment to truth. Welcome you, sir, a true torchbearer of Indian journalism, to this esteemed platform. Last but not least, our senior, our mentor, under whose guidance most of the journalists of my generation have worked in Odisha. He is none other than Sri Sandeep Sahu. Welcome you, sir. It is a privilege to introduce our distinguished voice of Indian journalism and one of Odisha's most respected media personalities, Mr. Sandeep Sahu, sir. With over 3 decades of rich experience, Mr. Sahu has carved a niche for himself as a senior journalist known for his incisive analysis and in-depth reporting. Based in Bhubaneswar, his career spans multiple mediums, including print, television, and digital platforms, reflecting his versatility and adaptability in a constantly evolving media landscape. Beyond his journalistic endeavors, Mr. Sahu is a mentor to aspiring journalists and voice of reason in a world often cluttered with noise. Please join me welcoming Sandeep Sahu, sir. Welcome you, sir, to this August gathering. Today, the first plenary session is on the topic contribution of Dr. Hare Krishna Mahatab to Odia journalism. Dr. Mahatab is the iconic figure of Odisha, and he is a tall man of Odisha history who carved the modern Odisha that we are witnessing today. And as a journalist, in the beginning I have told you, as a journalist, he has contributed immensely for the development of Odia journalism in this state, and the testament is the newspaper Prajatantra, which was established in the pre-independent era, which became a voice during pre-independence and post-independence as the voice of the common man. So on this topic, there will be deliberation today. I welcome our today's chairperson of this session, Sri Somaranjan Patnaik sir, to give his opening remarks on this topic, then we will proceed further.
What time? 1 hour total? 2. Jai Jagannath. Let me compliment and congratulate the organizers of this conclave, and particularly for choosing all of us to be part of a group discussion on contribution of Dr. Hare Krishna Mahatab to Odia journalism. And perhaps you have noticed we 4 on the dais, except Professor Suresh ji. But I dare not say that, but if you stretch a little bit, all of us have links with Odia journalism. You must be wondering, Mr. Ruben Banerjee spent a lot of time in Odisha, and he has come back to Odisha in a new avatar. So he is very much part of Odia journalism as such. Sandeep Sao, one time a colleague of mine, and today is a freelance journalist contributing to various media and is very active. And Professor Nahak, as he himself admitted, and I'm very happy to be reminded of that, spent little time with our media outfit. And Professor Suresh stands out to be the only exception, but he has the greatest connection with Odia and Odisha. So therefore all connections are well placed. I do not want to waste much of time in giving you an introduction to the topic. Anybody who knows anything about Dr. Hare Krishna Mahatab, I think if I say that Orissa has a peculiar distinction of bringing some kind of repute or disrepute to the profession of journalism, in one sense, why I say this is politics, journalism, and literature. The three areas have converged in one person, and there are many examples of this, and perhaps Dr. Hare Krishna Mahatab leads the list. He was a politician, he was a freedom fighter, he was also a pioneer of a newspaper that is Prajatantra, and he also brought about tremendous changes through this newspaper in literature. We people in literature normally do not think very highly of journalists, and they perhaps always believe that journalists cannot be equated with literary people. At best, journalism is literature in a hurry, as they really say so. But with Dr. Hare Krishna Mahatab, I'm sure everybody will have to change their mind about how can journalists be part of the literary world. So to me, I will share some personal experiences with him in my closing remarks. I would not like to spend more time on that, but Dr. Hare Krishna Mahatab is perhaps today, 125 years ago, he was born, and we are celebrating his 125th birthday. I'm happy and I'm grateful to the government of Odisha and India for choosing to celebrate this birthday in a befitting manner. And day before yesterday, you may be knowing, he was honored and a special coin was inaugurated in his honor. But I must hasten to add that it took 125 years for the government of India, or for that matter, government of Odisha, to recognize that this man deserves to be recognized in this fashion. And as a journalist, with a little pinch of salt, I would say it took 125 years to recognize Hare Krishna Mahatab's talent and the contribution to Odia journalism, or it needs to be said, hasten to add, that one need to come to power to be able to recognize the great talent that is behind Dr. Hare Krishna Mahatab. अगर सत्ता में परिवर्तन नहीं होता, शायद महताब को ये कॉइन भी मिलना मुसीब नहीं होता। प्रतिभाओं को पहचानने के लिए आजकल के हिंदुस्तान में सत्ता में आना पड़ेगा, नहीं तो चाहे कितने भी आप होनहार हों, आपको कोई नहीं पहचानेगा। सत्ता ही सब कुछ है। मेरा जर्नलिस्ट फ्रेंड must be knowing what I am trying to hint at. And with these opening remarks, I would like to invite Ruben ji to start off the discussion. Since we have agreed to wind it off by 1:30, so I will not be able to allow more than 10 minutes. And I think it will be fruitful if we allow one or two people to put some questions to some of the speakers, if it is permitted in the format. question answer. We have. With these opening remarks, let me invite Ruben Banerjee ji to share his thoughts with us.
Namaskar and good afternoon. And as always, it's great to be in Bhubaneswar. I'll start with a confession. I have many regrets in my life. Several things that I did not achieve or did not get that opportunity. And one of the regrets that I have is that I had never met in my life, I had never had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Mahatab. And imagine this irony. Dr. Mahatab passed away, if I'm not mistaken, in January 1987. And I landed up for the first time in Orissa 1 month later, February 1987. I missed out on Dr. Mahatab just by a month. And that's a regret which is going to stay. And another admission, like I think among the people who are on the dais, I must be the least knowledgeable about Dr. Mahatab. Because as I said, I have never met him. I have only, like many of us, I have read up on him. I have read a lot of literature that exists about Dr. Mahatab. I have read 1 or 2 columns of his also. Not that I take a lot of time to read Oriya, but I do read Oriya. So I have had that opportunity of reading. He was a great man. And imagine the kind of whatever that he achieved in his lifetime. He was a Congress leader, he was a politician par excellence, he was a journalist, he was an editor, he was an entrepreneur, media entrepreneur by his own right. He started Prajatantra, shifted it to Balasore, brought it back to Bhubaneswar, and Prajatantra had seen great days. So, Prime Minister, Chief Minister, Union Minister, whatever that we can think of, he had achieved in his life. So there is a lot to admire in Dr. Mahatab. But while we eulogize, and maybe forgive me if I'm being slightly politically incorrect here, he was a man, obviously, he definitely was a great man of his, but his greatness was confined to his times. He was great then. We need to eulogize him, we need to respect him, we need to admire him. But while we eulogize him, does it necessarily also mean that we blindly do what he had been doing then? Because what he was doing then was possibly justified in those times. Now, I think we should not be blindly, while we eulogize him, we should not blindly follow his footsteps. One, I believe in media press freedom. Journalism then, when Dr. Mahatab was practicing journalism, they were driven by different objectives, different ideals. That was first, Prajatantra was started. Obviously, it was freedom struggle. When Prajatantra was revived, resurrected, came back to Cuttack again from Balasore, I think it was nation building. So he had enough reasons to be a media luminary. But 70, 80 years later, the context has changed, the situation has changed. I think one of the biggest problems that the media in India faces today is twofold. One is corporatization and the second is politicization. It's always better if politicians stay away from the media. So Dr. Mahatab, as a pioneering politician, being a pioneering media person 75 years ago does not necessarily mean that is a recipe of success even now. So while we eulogize and pay our respects and tribute to Dr. Mahatab, we should be, I think, not lose sight of the fact that politics and media, it's better that they stay away from each other. I do understand that Shomu Babu is here, and someone who I look up to, I seek his advice, and he has been very generous and kind to me personally at an individual level. But Shomoda, I must tell you, every time you contest election, I shake my head in disbelief. I wish you were not a politician. You have been such a media entrepreneur. You have been such a inspiring media personality in Orissa. You would have, this is my personal feeling, like, you would have achieved much, much more had you not been in electoral politics. That's my personal view. But then finally the choice is yours, so we defer to that. But I still go back to that same point, like politics and media should be two separate entities and there shouldn't be an interplay. Otherwise, we lose our freedom or we get compromised possibly in a more than one way. I also, while I talk and think about, like I have been reading up, because since Upendra invited me here, I have been reading up on Dr. Mahtab. It made me also think, what would have Mahtab done now if he was a journalist editor now in the present context? 1921, he went to jail, he was arrested on sedition. Now, if he had been a fearless journalist, he would again possibly been in jail on sedition. Now, new set of laws, BNS has replaced IPC. The word per se, sedition, has been removed. But more draconian provisions have been included in the new Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita. You can be jailed for more number of years. There is less scrutiny. So could Dr. Mahtab have practiced his brand of fearless journalism now that which he used to practice 70 years earlier? I have my doubt. How would have Dr. Mahtab, say, for example, reacted or responded to the disinformation that we see everywhere? Misinformation was always there, but disinformation is a new phenomenon, there is an avalanche of disinformation. How would he have possibly reacted to AI, artificial intelligence? So these are just food for thought. I would also not like to take too much of time. Dr. Mahtab was a great, great luminary, someone we must eulogize and look up to. What he had achieved in his life is something that we can't even possibly imagine. I was reading somewhere that he was such a man of such great competence and intellect. Even his bathroom was a library. He would read books even while he is in the toilet. So a phenomenal human being. While we get inspired by him, my only suggestion is, humble suggestion is, that we need not necessarily blindly eulogize. That was then. We are living in a different world now. While we take inspiration for Dr. Mahtab, we also need to adapt ourselves to the changing circumstances. Thank you. Great talking to you.
Reverend, you have really kicked up a controversy and rightly challenging me, advising me to give up politics and concentrate on journalism. I think I would draw your attention to Odisha's history of journalism, wherein all these issues come up. If you look at all the newspapers, existing oldest newspaper, Samaj, was founded by Gopabandhu Das. I would not call him a politician, but he hardly had time to look after Samaj, not more than 9 years. He died in 1928. Samaj was started in 1919, 9 years. Dr. Radhanath Rath took over the management and everything, and even until after he became 103 years old, he was looking after Samaj. Can you believe at one point of time, Dr. Harikrishna Mahtab was the chief minister, and Dr. Radhanath Rath, editor Samaj, was also a minister in the cabinet. This is perhaps the first time anywhere in India a cabinet has both the newspapers, managers or the owners, as the cabinet members. Dr. Harikrishna Mahtab started Prajatantra. There are very interesting stories about why Dr. Harikrishna Mahtab started Prajatantra. Although Dr. Radhanath Rath was the editor of Samaj at the leading Delhi, in those days when the Hirakud Dam was started in Orissa, there was a lot of displacement issues. Therefore, he was writing venomous against Dr. Mahtab in his newspaper while being in his cabinet. Can you imagine Amit Shah writing in his own newspaper against Narendra Modi? It is almost that kind of a scene. We can't imagine that situation. But the real birth of some Prajatantra was due to the fact that the chief minister was without a newspaper which will talk the which will represent and which will perhaps express the opinion of the other side. So, and if you look at all other newspapers thereafter, Biju Patnaik, who became a chief minister, he thought that he has to have a newspaper of his own. Kalinga was the product. Biren Mitra, who became the chief minister, he started a newspaper which was called Janasakti. And anybody who wanted to be somebody in Orissa, and J.B. Patnaik, who became chief minister for some time, was also for long 17 years editor of Prajatantra. And if you come out to the modern times, Nandini Satpathy, when she became the chief minister, she started her newspaper, Dharitri. And Samahit Bal and his father was Pradyumna Bal. When he became a member of parliament and when he was he thought probably to be in politics, one has to have a newspaper of his own. Pragatibadi came into being. When Basant Kumar Biswal became a dissident leader and he was not favored with whatever facilities that Congress party was provided to, was supposed to do him, then he started Samay. And lo and behold, when I came back, and I happened to be the chief minister's son-in-law, a lot of people have linked politics with me. I should have cut this by not entering into politics, which you rightly say. But Orissa has a long history of political association of journalists, and politics and journalism almost went together for a long, long time. Even now also, every other newspapers are also politically linked. But the other way is, now the new generation is, we are having the same kind of link between the corporate world and the newspapers. So one has to think very seriously what should be done about this kind of unholy nexus between politics, journalism, and perhaps now literature and industry. Let me now, with these words, request Sandeep Sahu to share his thoughts with us.
Thank you, sir. Very good afternoon to all the dignitaries on the dais and everyone in front of me. Like Mr. Ruben Banerjee, I also have a perennial regret that I never got an opportunity to meet Dr. Mahtab in person. Though I was in Bhubaneswar since 1981 and he died in 87. But one memory that has stayed with me all these years is Dr. Mahtab's car passing on the National Highway. I was staying in a hostel which was just next to the National Highway, and almost every day I used to watch his car pass by at a particular time. He was so particular about his time that you could set your watch to it. The red car, which was very famous, that the car he used to take from Bhubaneswar to Cuttack to visit the editorial duties in Prajatantra. And when I was in school, the Odia vernacular media scene was dominated by two newspapers. My editor has already mentioned those two dailies, Samaj and Prajatantra. But my father used to subscribe to Prajatantra. And one day, I asked my father, why are you subscribing to Prajatantra and not Samaj? And he told me, it's because he wants to read Gamalis. Those are the days when we used to get the dark edition, which reached at very late, and the place where we stayed. My father was a government servant and worked very far from Cuttack and Bhubaneswar. So the newspapers, both Samaj and Prajatantra, used to reach a day late. But my father would just pounce on the Gaon Majlis column, and he insisted that I should also read the column, if not the rest of the newspaper. And I started reading Gaon Majlis, his famous column, where he dealt with all kinds of subjects. And I wish I could write a column like that. Of course, I write a column in Sambaad. Mr. Soumyarajan Patnaik has been kind enough to give me a place. But I can never dream of writing, covering the variety of subjects that he did, and in the language that he did. He wrote in a language that was understood by the common person, the person who had only a basic knowledge of Odia, somebody in a village who could understand, as did everyone else. And that was the most striking feature of his column writing. The language that he used was aimed at the lowest common denominator, who only had a basic education with Odia medium. He could understand what he is talking about, something which I have found it very difficult to emulate. I have not been able to bring myself down to that level where I can communicate with a common person in a language that he understands. And for me, Dr. Mahtab would be remembered if he had not done anything, if he had not gone into politics, if he had not done anything else. I would remember him for his Gaon Majlis column, which has 8 volumes published, and one of them went on to win the Sahitya Academy Award. My former editor, Mr. Ruben Banerjee, talked about separating journalism from politics. And my former editor, Mr. Soumyarajan Patnaik, he gave a justification why in Odisha, in the particular context, politics has never really been detached with journalism. My own view on this thing is, given the kind of socio-political situation we had at the time, Dr. Mahtab as a journalist, I don't think he could have achieved what he did had he not been a politician. To cite just one example, he took up the cause of animal sacrifice in the famous Chandi Mandir in Cuttack. And he carried on the campaign in Prajatantra, and in also he took it up on the street. And together, those two simultaneous campaigns finally ensured that animal sacrifice was stopped. No journalist could have done the same. We still write about animal sacrifice in Balangir. The administration still tries to stop it every year, but has not been able. He could do that because he was a politician, he was a social reformer, at the same time he was also a journalist. So for a person to combine all those attributes as a journalist, as a politician, as a social reformer, that is amazing. We cannot think of another person in the modern era who has worn so many hats and managed to do justice to all of them. So my hats off to Dr. Mahtab. He has been a pioneer, not just in Odisha, even at the national level. He has been a pioneer in many things. Many of you perhaps don't know that the merger of princely states actually started from Odisha with a small princely kingdom called Nilagiri. And that was the first experiment in merger of princely states, which was later replicated nationwide by Sardar Patel, and more than 500 princely states merged with India, and Dr. Mahtab was the architect of that first merger. So many things I can say, but since I've been given 10 minutes of time, I won't prolong this talk any longer. Prajatantra, the story of modern Odisha, the socio-cultural, political life of Odisha has been the story of Prajatantra. As long as he was there at the helm of Prajatantra, I think Prajatantra controlled or influenced the socio-cultural, political life of Odisha like no other Odia newspaper has managed to do. And my tributes to Dr. Mahtab for having shown the way, not just during the freedom struggle, but more importantly, after independence, even when he was not in power, he talked truth to power. He brought out the common man's point of view in his writing, which was a great thing. Mr. Soumyarajan Patnaik referred to how he was in government, but his newspaper used to take a stand which was completely different from this government stand, and very few people can manage that. You had a newspaper and you are also a politician, but your stand will be different. That is a very, very difficult thing to manage. So hats off to him, my tributes to him, and we should all try to learn a little more about Dr. Mahtab, those who don't know enough. If nothing else, I think everyone who reads Odia should read Gaon Majlis. With that, I'll just close my speech. Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you, Upendra Padi Mahasai, for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep. You have just heard two active journalists speaking about the state of journalism in the country and Dr. Harikrishna Mahtab and his role, and one not very happy with the way politics and journalism went together in Odisha. Here is another rebuttal that Dr. Mahtab could not have achieved what he achieved just as a journalist. His political connections and particularly being in power helped him a lot to achieve or to be what he has been. Now let us move to two more. We have got the other two, not only practitioners of politics, but they are perhaps educators of journalism. One is Vice Chancellor, the other one who initially spoke to us was also a faculty in the communication department. I sometimes wonder, can journalists be created in the university classrooms, like the artist and other things? Or journalism is a form of art, one which is not to be taught, but don't take me seriously. It is a challenge that I am throwing to you. Yes, we can produce better journalists in the classrooms, and the wayward journalists on the streets will not succeed the way they are doing today. Thank you. Mr. Gorge.
Respected Chair, Shri Soumyarajan Patnaik, my friend from Delhi, Ruben Banerjee, Shri Sandeep Sahu Sahab, and my young academician friend, Professor Fakir Mohan Nahak, and of course, the dynamo behind this entire national media conclave, my dear friend, Professor Upendra Padi, and respected media educators, media practitioners from all over the country who have assembled here, and dear media students. First of all, I want to salute Professor Upendra Padi, and I want all of you to join me in applauding him. You know, this is the 8th National Media Conclave. Perhaps this is the only major event of media educators anywhere in the country which has sustained. Many people tried. It lasted for 2 sessions, 3 sessions, but Professor Upendra Padi's dynamism has ensured that it has gone for 8 years, and I'm sure that under his leadership and subsequently to whomsoever he hands over the baton, this National Media Conclave is going to be a permanent fixture in the media education calendar of this country. So my, heartiest greetings. I myself don't know, as Mr. Patnaik said, that I am perhaps the only person with, who doesn't have a direct Odia connection. I've never been an Odia journalist. But maybe, I'm sure, an intellectual like Professor Upendra Padi might have had several reasons behind inviting me. And one of them, of course, is that I'm a son-in-law of Odisha. And not just a son-in-law of Odisha, but also the son-in-law of one of the leading journalists of Samaja, Shri Arun Kumar Panda. I am his son-in-law. And late Arun Kumar Panda, he is no more there. He passed away recently. And all my family members from my wife's side are in media only, and some of them are working in Samaj only and other papers. So, and maybe one of the reasons is that here you see the logo of the Indian Communication Congress. And the Indian Communication Congress, Professor Upendra Padi is the Secretary General of the Indian Communication Congress, and I happen to be the Vice President. And I must tell all the media educators who are present here that Indian Communication Congress aspires to be what Indian History Congress has done, what Indian Science Congress has done, to be a great assembly of media educators from all over the country to talk on issues related to Indian media and Indian media education, to serve as the beacon light. That is the objective of the Indian Communication Congress. Later, of course, Professor Bipin, who is the founder, he would certainly throw more light on this. And I would also like to avail this opportunity to pay my humble tributes. Only last evening, one of the leading media educators, the founder course director of the Advertising and Public Relations Department of the Indian Institute of Mass Communication, Professor Om Cheri N. Pillai, passed away. So I wish to, and I'm sure Professor B.P. Sanjay knew him very well, and he was also my mentor and guru. And on behalf of the entire media education fraternity, I would like to pay humble tributes to late Professor Pillai, who completed 100 years recently. Friends, let me come to the subject. Many issues have been raised and things have been made easier for me. But what I would like to mention here, without rebutting anybody, is that when Utkala Keshari became a journalist, he was not just a politician, he was a freedom fighter. Those days, media had a mission. He did not use media to become a politician or to strengthen his political party. I am only a student of media and I have only read about him. But from whatever I have read, I think that for him, he was inspired deeply by Mahatma Gandhi, and particularly, because I always say that there are three sections of the society which immensely contributed to the freedom struggle of this country. One is, of course, the lawyers, the media persons, and academicians. These were the three intellectual sections. So most of the freedom fighters were either journalists, or they were lawyers, or they were teachers, and some of them combined, all of them combined together. People like Madan Mohan Malviya, So he was deeply, inspired by Gandhiji, and of course, publications like, Harijan. So Gandhiji also utilized the power of Indian opinion when he was in South Africa, in Natal, in Transvaal, or when he came back, whether it was in the form of Young India or, Harijan, to reach out, to create a public opinion, which was utilized by almost everybody, from Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak to, Baba Saheb Ambedkar, who used Mook Nayak as a weapon to reach out to the, oppressed, to raise their voice. So I'm sure that, the late Hare Krishna Mohtab, utilized the power of media to reach out. And just now, Sandeep Sahuji was talking about his Gaon Majlis. I think that anybody who is talking about rural communication today, about development journalism today, has to study about Gaon Majlis. Today, we give the examples of Gaon Connection by Nilesh Mishra. We give reference to our students about Khabar Lehriya, about what Shubhranshu Chaudhary is doing through his Bluetooth venture in Chhattisgarh. But I think that not just students of Odia journalism, but students of journalism across the country should necessarily read all the 3 volumes, translated, and maybe if National Media Conclave or Professor Padi can take up that task of, I'm sure he will find support, from all quarters, or Indian Communication Congress, I can request Professor Biplab Loha Chaudhary to ensure that this works of particularly Gaon Majlis is taken, translated into different languages, because he used to directly communicate with the people at large to create awareness, among them. Today we give the examples of P. Sainath, about Pari, how, through Pari he is reaching out and giving a voice to the voiceless. Maybe I think that it is very important that, how in those times he felt that he should not be catering only to the intellectual community at large, but also to the people at the grassroots level. When I started rural journalism in my Riva campus as Vice Chancellor of the university, many people make fun. Oh, sir, who will study rural communication? Today, of course, it's a very successful program. But I think that it's a very sad state of affairs. Development journalism today, yes, for some time, of course, in Indian Institute of Mass Communication, it used to be for everybody. Then subsequently, development journalism, we started teaching only students from the non-aligned developing countries. And now that course has also disappeared, from IIMC. But development journalism as a course, not just as a unit in the syllabus, but as a course, needs to be revised, reinvented, reignited, and we need to talk about it. And for that, I think that Gaon Majlis is a very powerful reference point, where we can talk about it. You see, you need not agree with everything about a particular person. I believe that let us take what is, for example, as students of communication, I don't agree with Mahatma Gandhi's views on cinema. He looked at it as evil, He looked at it as something which is not good for the society. But he just saw one film in his entire life, and that too, he sat there only for half the time, and then he walked out. And he said that this is going to have a very negative social impact. That's what he felt about cinema. It's a different thing that his life has inspired so many films, right from Richard Attenborough's Gandhi to, Munna Bhai MBBS, you can name it. So many films has been inspired by his life. But Gandhiji personally did not like cinema. So there are aspects of every individual which we do not. But there is absolutely no doubt that Mahatma Gandhi was one of the greatest communicators of all times. In fact, the most powerful communicator of 20th century. And, it's not through his writings and his speeches, but also his non-verbal communication, whether it is the use of the charkha, whether it is his own attire, everything communicated so much. And I think that we need to learn communication from him. So similarly, I think that, you see, from whatever I have read, I may be wrong, I'm sorry, because these are all luminaries from the world of Oriya literature and media who are on the stage and in the auditorium. But I just want to say that, from whatever I have read, Dr. Mahtab was opposed to Acharya Vinoba Bhave's Bhudan movement, but Prajatantra supported it. Prajatantra supported, the Bhudan movement of Acharya Vinoba Bhave. So how can we say that, he espoused only his causes, this entire thing was only in support of, whatever he said or did. So it was not his mouthpiece. Prajatantra was never his mouthpiece, so to say. So I think that his style, his writing style, his straight talk, he had disagreements with many people, in fact, even with his mentor, Madhusudan Das, and he absolutely had no problem in communicating the same straight and upfront. And I think that his autobiography, some portions of which I have read, which are available in other languages also. But I think that for media students particularly, there are a large number of students and scholars here. I think that I would give a request, I would make an appeal to all the media educators here that if we can, when we talk about the freedom movement and the role of communicators, we talk about Mahatma Gandhi, we talk about, Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak, we talk about Baba Saheb Ambedkar. I think in the national curriculum, not just the Odia media, but also in the national curriculum of all media schools, we should have a chapter devoted to Dr. Hare Krishna, Mahtab. I think that is a recommendation that should strongly go from this august audience, that his life and works are very important, which need to be studied, how somebody can be. And I don't know, I really don't know, when I read about his life, when I think that how can somebody be, if not a superhuman, do so many things together, historian, somebody who translated Valmiki Ramayana and the Bhagavad Gita into Odia, somebody who was a translator, who was a writer, who was a historian. I think he was a genius par excellence, apart from being, of course, a great politician, which he was, a great integrator, the Sardar Patel of Odisha, the great developer of modern Odisha from Hirakud to, all the steel plants. So I think that this is amazing, remarkable personality that he was, and I'm glad that Professor Upendra Padi thought it prudent to include this aspect of his life as a communicator while celebrating the 125th birth anniversary of Dr. Mahtab at this very August forum. My compliments, and I'm sure that, we will be discussing about it. Today there is a paucity of time, so I don't want to take much of your time, and we are all coming closer to lunchtime. So thank you so much for inviting me, being part of this. Let's hope that we will take this message forward. Thank you. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you, Professor Suresh. Now is time for some questions. Yes? Do you have a mic?
Dada doesn't need a mic.
I'm inspired by KG. So, Soumya Babu, the proposal he has given, I know my able companion, our Secretary General Upendra Da will be me, he will be with me, our Treasurer Devabani Mukherjee will be me, and Professor B.K. Ravi, our Executive Chairman, will be with me. So we take the responsibility from ICC, and there are members also of ICC. Pradeep Malik is here, then our friend from Jharkhand, Devbrat. Devbrat is there. There are so many of our friends from South India, North India, everywhere. We all together will make it possible. And it will be done as a first aim of Indian Communication Congress, that it will make translations of different Indian relevant books and create books in different languages. So let us start with an English volume translation of Hare Krishna Mahtab's Ramaji as a development communication matter. Don't think about Manimitam, it's a good word, Manimitam. And I tell you, the publisher is also ready to be ready.
Thank you. I only add to that yesterday, first volume of Ramaji in English has been released. Oh, there are many. There are 5 to 6 volumes.
Okay.
You can take on the other one. କାଲି ଇଂରାଜୀରେ ଗୋଟେ ଟ୍ରାନ୍ସଲେସନ୍ ହେଇକି ବାହାରିଛି ତରୁଣ ସାହୁଙ୍କର।
Okay, so we can have a relevant all from 10 volumes into one volume.
Thank you.
We'll do that from ICC. Because we have less funding for us, but we will do it. No issue.
Next.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Saswat Panigari. I'm basically an independent journalist and a researcher also. I have read Dr. Harikrishna Mahata and some of his columns, Garamagis. What I observed was Dr. Mahata was, what I observed is Dr. Mahata was essentially a essential Hindu. Recently, the government of India has formed a committee to celebrate the 125th birth anniversary of Dr. Mahata. I congratulate the government of India for forming the committee. But what has happened? That particular committee formation, which Amit Shahji, the Indian Home Minister, is chairing, in that particular committee, a person in the name of Dr. Rajendra Kishore Panda, who called Ma Sita as prostitute, he was included in the committee. So my question is to the entire panel and the National Media Conclave, is it a gross disrespect to somebody at the stature of Dr. Mahata? Number one. Number two, would National Media Conclave propose to delete that name of Dr. Rajendra Kishore Panda from the committee? Thank you.
One of the greatest qualities of Dr. Mahtab was that he was equally at ease with ideologies. He had friends across the ideological spectrum. He was very close to RSS. He was inspired by RSS, but at the same time, he had close friends among communists, among socialists, and of course, he was a congressman. So he carried that very delicate balance. As far as this committee and other things are concerned, National Media Conclave is headed by Professor Upendra Padi. He and his team has to take a call, but certainly we hope that the committee does justice to his legacy. That is what we expect. Thank you so much.
Are somebody has become a member of the committee, how is he going to influence? How is he going to disrespect Dr. Harikrishna Mahata?
He was the person who translated Ramayana into Odia. He was never against Hinduism. So this is something like entire audience is there, and I don't think, I'm very sure 99% of the audience.
You are only worried about Rajendra Panda's views describing Sita as a prostitute.
Exactly, sir.
Somebody who describes Sita as a prostitute should not be in that committee.
Exactly,
It is
sir.
Being constituted to respect Harikrishna Mahata. This is what you.
Yes, sir.
ऐसे बहुत लोग आते रहते हैं, क्यों घबराते हो? एक आदमी कमेटी में ऐसा घुस जाएगा तो क्या कर लेगा?
But sir, क्यों घुसेगा? My question is क्यों घुसेगा?
This is not a question. This is a. Okay. Next.
Hello, sir. Sir, I am Subham Tripathi. I am a research scholar from GM University. Basically, I belong to Karnataka district, Bhavanipatna. I am a regular subscriber and I do watch Ruben Kovaci in YouTube, and I am a big fan of Ruben sir. So my question is to Ruben sir. Sir, I have heard your speech. Sir, since I belong to Kalanandi, very remote place in in Odisha, I always think when the media organizations having their headquarters in capital city, be it Bhubaneswar or Delhi, anywhere, they are politically influenced. So why can we think of any media organization going and opening their headquarters in remote areas and get the real picture of the remote area, they can improve. So this is my question, sir. Thank you.
I respect your opinion and I understand what you are trying to say, but this will may not be practical, because what happens is the media is also revenue driven. You have to earn. And I'll tell you a practical problem how the media dynamics works. I was an Odisha reporter working for India Today. And what would I be writing on? Essentially, I was writing on poverty, distress, hunger, malnutrition, Kalahandi, Koraput, Bolangi. Now, this is a practical problem that you face, because the editors sitting in Delhi, they are into selling their magazine, right? They say, "Tumhara story sexy nahi hai." Because no advertiser, no corporate house will be sponsoring your stories. But you have to also make money, otherwise you don't survive. So it's a very, see what you are saying, I fully agree. In an ideal world, yes. But can it happen? No, it will not happen. Because finally you will have to be in Bombay, Delhi and all. That is where your corporate money is. Everyone has been trying, no one has so far succeeded. So let's hope.
I think 2 more questions. Time is out. Yes. Without mic.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Mr. Mishra, and I am a first-year undergraduate student here at KIT University, and I hail from the Department of English. My question arises from a fundamental curiosity, sir, that in the multipolar, multidimensional world of today, where multidisciplinary studies is the demand of the day, what provides for the scope of antagonism between politics, journalism, and literature among the 3 streams of human endeavor, despite the fact that all 3 of them are rooted in the basic human voice and the need to voice it, and not just voice it, but find ways to mitigate popular emotions and then cater to popular needs. In such a case, in this scenario, what really makes them antagonistic to each other and one another? That would be my question.
Okay. Politics, media, and religion. Well, I think that politics and religion have been part of human life since time immemorial. Media is a recent phenomena. Mass media, particularly, is a recent phenomena. And media is an expression of human sentiments, you see. So it could be political, it could be religious. So I see no reason for a conflict. You see, that there has to be necessarily an adversarial model. But unfortunately, Western communication theories have always talked about this adversarial role of media. Media has to be necessarily anti-establishment. That also does not mean it has to be necessarily pro-establishment. I think that the purpose of media, or if I'm talking about news media, is that whatever is in the larger interests of the people. So if the government of the day, which is a democratically elected government, whether it's the state or the center or whichever state it is, if a government is doing well for the people, for example, a movement like Swachh Bharat, I think, is in the larger interests of the common society also. I see no reason why Swachh Bharat should be opposed by the media. But at the same time, if there are issues related to corruption, if there are issues related to law and order, certainly media is duty bound to raise those issues. So to expect a very harmonious kind of a role, I think that would be very idealistic. But at the same time, there is no need for a confrontational role. Today, that is why everybody is now talking about positive media, solutions media. Even very critical newspapers like Bhaskar has a Dainik Bhaskar, for example, which still continues to, in the north, raise its voice on very critical issues. It has on one particular day, which is called Sakaratmak Somvar. On Monday, the first page only has positive news. There is a Good News Today channel, run by the India Today. There is Good News India, run by Doordarshan program. When I was the editor of Doordarshan, I have had the honor of starting that program. Now, positive things also need to be spoken about. Positive things does not mean only positive about the government. Positive things mean positive things in the society, individual initiatives, societal initiatives. Because the job of media is not just to inform and educate, but also to inspire. That role also we have to keep in mind. So I think that the good elements of politics and religion has to be certainly manifested and inspired by media. That's what I believe in. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are running short of time, so we are not going for any further questions. Now I would like to request our Honorable Chairperson of this session, Sri Soumyaranjan Patnaik sir, for his closing remarks. Then we will proceed further.
I would only request all of you to pose few questions to yourself, particularly those who want to pursue a career in media. And while talking about contribution of Dr. Harikrishna Mahatab's contribution to Odia journalism, one thing strikes me: he was ahead of his times. Rubenji was talking about perhaps Mahatab would have been a misfit today with his ideology, with his what he thought about the world and thought about politics and the freedom movement and whatever. But I would also like to present to you Dr. Harikrishna Mahatab as somebody who was ahead of his times. And I would like to recollect one personal experience of mine. I have very fond memories of my interaction, both good and bad, with Dr. Harikrishna Mahatab. We were competitors. Can you imagine son-in-law of a chief minister is launching a newspaper, and a close collaborator of Dr. Harikrishna Mahatab, Janaki Balla Patnaik, who was the editor of Prajatantra for 17 years before he left and entered into politics and became the chief minister. So, and the Prajatantra was supposed to be pro J.B. Patnaik, and Samaj was not so happy with J.B. Patnaik's government. So Prajatantra and Samaj, they were loggerheads. One supporting the government, the other was not so very pleased with the government. Here comes another son-in-law who launches a newspaper. And I did not know anything about newspaper at that point of time. I had a hell of a job to sustain it. At that time, I ran a series, interview with VIPs in the politics. Do you know what was the headline of my interview with Dr. Harikrishna Mahatab? It was in Oriya. Durniti ku niti karidele sabu samasyara samadhan heijibo. When there was a lot of talk about Biju Patnaik's corruption, Biren Mitra's corruption, Prajatantra, if you look at old copies of Prajatantra, it was anti-Biju Patnaik. And lo and behold, Biju Babu was one of the fundraisers for Prajatantra in his very bad days. He was the manager. And so if somebody, at one point of time, somebody questioned me, who is a better or more successful person in the media world, Dr. Harikrishna Mahatab or Dr. Radhanath Rath? I had voted for Radhanath Rath. And I will tell you why. You can understand why. Radhanath Rath was more successful as a media person. Harikrishna Mahatab is a very successful person as a hero, as a leader, because Radhanath Rath is only a matriculate. Gopabandhu Das gave him this newspaper while he was his private secretary or PA, whatever you know. And he ran the show for so many years and sustained the newspaper for how many years? 1919 to until he was dead, about almost 80, 90 years. Hare Krishna Mahatab had Biju Patnaik as his fund manager, J.B. Patnaik as his editor, Nilamani Rautrai as his errand boy, Viren Mitra as his hawker, and all the literary people at that point of time in Orissa, where he's in the editorial desk. With all these talents that is available in Orissa, he was running a newspaper. And because of that, that newspaper became something different. Today we are talking about feature journalism. Why was Prajatantra successful at all? It was successful because it was involved in politics, it was involved in literature, it was involved in language movement, it was involved in children's literature. There was one Mina Bazaar to integrate the children to get into reading habits and organizing themselves. There was a Vishwa Milan which collected all the literary people in the state once in a year to celebrate the cause of Odia literature. And he was doing politics. And Prajatantra, when he was doing politics, was the pro-government. When he was out of power, it was the spokesperson of the opposition. So what I mean to say is, and when he said this, at that time, you young people were very furious. What the hell he is speaking? He's supporting corruption. He's championing corruption. Dunniti ko niti karidale. Today, if you go back and read that interview, you will find how true he was. What is today in politics? This is all about money, how to win election. And he knew how to win election left, right, and center. He never lost any election in his life. Any one of us who are in politics have won and lost in equal measure. But he is the one who did not lose a single election. कुछ तो होगा उसमें जिसमें कि उसको पता रहता है कैसे जीतते हैं election. So he was very ahead of his times. So I would like to close. He was a great man. He was a very successful person. He knew what he was doing, and he knew that the role of a newspaper is not only to disseminate news, it is only to connect people and integrate people through the development of language. Look at his prose. His prose is simply scotch on the, as they say, scotch on the rocks. It simply flows. It doesn't, you need not worry about his prose. His prose is so common. A common man with elementary knowledge will understand his prose better. And it was said, Aji Gam Majlisre Kaun Bharji. One single column used to change the opinion of the whole state at some point of time. The student movement of 1960 was championed by this newspaper. All the leaders of Orissa, in literature, in politics, in sports, in other things. Can you think of a situation in which in those days he had a film critic column? A lot of people said, ये क्या है? Heroine का photo निकालने से अखबार थोड़ी चलता है. A lot of people have different ideas about newspaper, what it should do and what it should contain. But Dr. Hare Krishna Mahatab had a modern outlook. The newspaper should have features, should have information, should integrate people, should also talk about the political issues. But to me, he was ahead of his times, and language is the real contribution that a newspaper can make. A Odia language, when it was under stress, like Fakirmohan Senapati, and in the modern times, the language and literature was served by the newspaper. Therefore, I think this great man, although we are opposed to each other, we fought with each other because he thought, I have come as a sultan, because he was already having the privileges of the government, and the son-in-law of a chief minister launching a speech paper, all the advertisements will come to the government, all the facilities will come to me, but I was not in that mold. Therefore, I owe my success to Dr. Hare Krishna Mahatab because we were fighting with each other. And that first interview he gave to our newspaper, I was interviewing him myself, that दुर्नीति को नीति କରିଦେଲେ ସବୁ ସମସ୍ୟାର ସମାଧାନ ହେଇଯିବ. That is why I tell him I want to present him as a person ahead of his times. Thank you. For a formal vote of thanks, I would like to invite Professor Nahak.
Now I would like to request our Director, Institute of Media Studies and Chairman of this conference, Sri Upendra Padi sir, to felicitate our respected guest on the dais. Please give a big hand. Please be seated for next 2 minutes. I know that you all are hungry and it is lunch time. This is a formal vote of thanks. Thank you. Thanks all the honorable dignitaries present here. And thank you, Soumyaranjan sir, for your precious time. You talked about the history of political association of journalism in Odisha. And you gave so many anecdotes. And the way you fought, you learned with Sri Harikrishna Mahatap. It is a great lesson for all of us. Thank you, Ruben Maharajji sir, for your precious time and your insightful thoughts that you have shared here with our audience and participants. I extend my heartfelt thanks to Sri Sandeep Sahu sir for his thoughts on Gaon Majlis and how Gaon Majlis exactly paved the path for Odia journalism in our state particularly, and how it talked about Odia language, the kind of language and the stories Dr. Harikrishna Mahatap took in his series. He discussed on all that issues. Thank you, Sandeep sir. And thank you, Professor K.G. Suresh, sir, for connecting development communication with Ga Majlis and proposing the translation of Ga Majlis into English and incorporating it, including it into the curriculum of development journalism, development communication. Thank you very much for all your ideas and thoughts. Once again, I thank all the dignitaries present here in the audience and all the students, all participants from across the country and joining this 8th National Media Conclave plenary session on the topic contribution of Dr. Hare Krishna Mahtab to Odia journalism. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Jai Jagannath. Jai Hind.